Hey guys, my name is Tyler. Welcome to the Faith, Family, and Focus Show, where we help you steer the course of biblical Christianity in our culture today. And each week we dive into God's Word and we answer the challenging questions of today. And today we have a very special guest with us. He's been a guest on the podcast and done some articles and stuff for our ministry in the past. And it's privileged to welcome Pastor Michael Lane from Calvary Baptist Church in King. Michael, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about for just maybe some of the audience members that don't know you, Michael. We've been friends for many years, but maybe for people that don't know you, tell us what it's like to be you these days, and kind of how you got where you are now, briefly.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's busy to be I work at Calvary. I also it's just I do a variety of things here at the church, whether it's building maintenance and building new buildings, that sort of thing, or renovating things that are always going on around here. I work in our media ministry, site and live stream and all those sorts of things. And I also work on our stewardship area of growing stewardship within our church. So there are a lot of things going on here, and it's growing up in a pastor home. Um, really, churches between 30 and 100 situation like this. And it's just been amazing. In Bible college, built my first PowerPoint and began to build PowerPoints, doing different things in to build them for our church and work in different areas of ministry and ended up serving here, running a large portion of our media ministry here. So it's just interesting to see how God takes the little that we have and can do things with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And isn't I mean, what youth pastor doesn't do a little bit of everything, right?
Absolutely.
And,
Back
yeah, when I think of someone who's
tonight.
got oh, yes. When I think of someone who's got multiple hats, you're like the first guy that comes to my mind. I'm like, "That guy's got he got a whole closet of hats."
I do.
And, so, but Michael, thanks for being on today. And Michael, primarily, your ministry is to with the media ministry, obviously, now, and you've done a lot with youth and young people in the past. And one of the things that I've drawn from you over the years and our friendship is that just you seem to be up to date with technology and where it's going and how it's influencing young minds and those kind of things. And that's kind of what we're going to dive into today: the dangers of technology and how we can better win young people with the gospel. Yes, but also how we can just combat this whole inundation. I think one of the greatest stumbling blocks of the gospel is technology and how it can be a deterrent. So we're going to get into some of that in just a moment. Let me go ahead and ask the first question, and Michael, and give me your thoughts on this. Um, Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that you've seen with young people and technology, just in your ministry, ministering to young people. What are some of the challenges that you are seeing right now?
From time to time, I do anonymous surveys with our teens. I'll just hand out surveys, and they love to tell me about themselves without attaching their name. It's a great way to just learn more about them and get into their mind a little bit. And they will regularly admit that their phones are a problem. But it's funny, if you talk to them in person, they may not say it as much, but when they are behind the veil of anonymity, they're very quick to admit that. Something I noticed several years ago is when we go to teen camp every summer, I take their phones, and every year I have to fight
Oh
to get
no.
trying to find them, and we put them in a lockbox, lock them away for the week, and something happens. There's a new light in their eyes as they begin to look from always looking down to making eye contact with people and having conversations. And the week of camp, God speaks to them and works in their hearts and at the end of the week, it never fails every year. That last day, I give them their phones back, and many of them are very slow to take their phones back, talking about the time they've had without them and how refreshing it's been. And that really is something that was very really just start accidentally trying to keep their focus, but it really began to show just the way that phones slowed them down and affected their day-to-day lives.
Wow. Yeah. Like even, sometimes if we just stop and listen, and you understand it with youth ministry, I feel like it is in general with people. Sometimes if we just stop and listen, like people will tell us the silent things they're struggling with out loud if we just listen
Absolutely.
close enough. And I worked in camp ministry for 10 years, and were you ever did you ever get to go to Hillsville?
Yes, yeah, we were there last summer actually touring the facilities and everything. There's no
Okay, awesome. Oh, yeah, no service, no Wi-Fi, no nothing. They've even updated it some since I was there, and you talk about someone just off the grid, just out in the middle of nowhere, but it's one of the greatest blessings, because just like what you're saying, I've seen that time and time again where young people, they come in and they're so inundated with messaging and so inundated in their video games that, you know, getting down in the dirt and making eye contact does a lot for the soul. And so that yeah, that's great. I definitely see what you're talking about there. And I think one of the greatest, the people probably the people that are listening to this that have the biggest question would be parents, right? Youth pastors like you, but also parents when it comes to young people and when it comes to technology. Here's my next question, I guess, for you. How can parents equip themselves in guarding their teens from the dangers of tech, from that obsession, from all of the things?
That is an incredible question, something that I am preaching all the time. They're the obvious things. They're, the social interaction issues, not spending time with their family, not being where their feet are, and, just interacting with people around them. But there's so much more to it than just the basics. Uh,
Mm.
you may be sort of in this generation. I think you were kind of in a transitional generation, but I was kind of the last generation that grew up going to the mall and hanging out. Did you do that at all as a teenager?
We did that some only because it was connected to teen soul winning, but yeah.
Yes. But, when I was growing up, our parents could pretty much monitor us where we were. They knew where we were. We were with a cousin, we were with a friend, we were in the neighborhood, we were at the mall. They generally had an idea. I mean, I was sort of in that first generation of flip phones, but they knew where I was, and the influences on my life were generally people that they knew. And I think the danger that we have right now is there are people speaking to our teenagers, and we have no idea who they are.
Hmm.
Um, as a parent, can you answer the question, who's your teenager's favorite podcaster? Who are their top 3 or 4 YouTubers they watch? Who do they follow
Hmm.
on who are the people speaking to them? Because the way the algorithms work is if they linger on one video a little bit longer than they linger on the previous video, it begins to show them more of that content. And so many times, um, they are fed with indoctrination from the world, and it's just awful. And we've seen a major rise in transgenderism, people questioning who they are, questioning the reality of God in their lives, and these
Yeah.
things start media. And it's just amazing the influence that social media has, where they're not to you as a parent or me as a youth pastor, but they're listening to someone who doesn't even know who they are, an anonymous person on social media that lives thousands of miles away. So I would say, to that was kind of a long way to get to the answer, but some ways parents can equip themselves. One is parent lead by example. It's really easy as a parent, being a parent myself, to get our child for being on technology too much. My kids aren't quite to the cell phone age yet, but spending too much time on their Nintendo Switch or doing different things. But then I have to look in the mirror sometimes to put my own cell phone away. And I think on your recent podcast you did, you were talking about taking your phone and putting it in a spot and avoiding it for a while. And that's something that we've got to do as parents. But then every parent says, "Not my kid." They know
Mm.
what the amount of kids addicted to pornography and the amount of kids sending inappropriate images and that sort of thing. But nearly every parent says, "Not my child." But the reality is, It probably is.
Mm.
Uh, things are no phone in the room at night, no phone in the bathroom, some of those sorts of things. But I would say the biggest thing out if they do have a phone, filtered phones. There are some great services out. Arc is one that a lot of our families have had success with. And
Which
it's
one is that one?
Arc,
Bark, like Bark?
Bark, yes.
Okay.
And Arc does is it is a monitoring service that really they stay up to date and are constantly up information on slang teenagers use, that sort of thing. And if it sees your teenager going to an area or even texting something that it feels is questionable, it will alert you.
Mm.
S Monitoring text messages and internet activity. And Bark has even recently introduced a Bark phone, which, unfortunately is Android based, but it is a phone that, does a lot of monitoring and does a very good job of monitoring. I'm an Apple guy. I love my Apple products, but Apple is very, very secure. And Bark, if you have a Bark phone, it really gets into the details. They also have a Bark smartwatch and some other things. So Bark is very good. There's another one, I believe it's called Custodio, Qstodio, and
Okay.
that's um, Canopy is another one that I've not used as much, but I've seen some good things out of. But then there are built-in features like the Apple Screen Time or Google Family Link. I've helped both of those. Right now, my kids are small, and they do have iPads, but I've been able to go into the Apple Screen Time and control. They have no access to the internet. They have no access to text strangers, and I have to approve every app they get. So we've really locked that down. But just using the Apple Screen Time app or Google Family Link, which are fairly similar, you really have the ability to lock those phones down in a great way. And I would even encourage parents to use AI in this area. If there's a particular thing you're trying to do, maybe um, uh, block certain things on the internet or do different things, AI can actually give you a step by step guide to make sure that things are locked down. So
Mm.
it's pretty impressive what we can use technology for to shield us from tech.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What do you feel like is you're talking about all these different, yeah, really, what I'm hearing a lot of it boils down to communication between parents and their teenagers, and we'll say teenagers, young people, because that's primarily who are the ones with the phones and with the iPads and that kind of thing. But so, what would you say, just in your experience, would be the awareness level of most parents today? Like, are
Very
they aware of what their teens are doing, or?
and they trust their teams.
Mm,
And our teams all the time, I don't trust you. I don't trust me. Right? I realize that I'm flawed and that I can sin and I can be involved in anything anybody else can be in. So if I don't trust myself and I put safeguards in place in my own life, we definitely should do that for teenagers. And parents just they sort of for some reason feel like most of the time their teens can do no wrong or don't realize how bad technology really can be. And I'm going to mention this. It's not a Christian resource, but several years ago they put out a documentary called The Social Dilemma. Have you seen that?
I have not, but I've heard about it.
And it really shows how that no product that's free is really free.
Mm,
And using a Google product when using Facebook or X or Instagram or Snapchat or any of these apps that's free, even AI. Really, what's being sold is access to you. So you really are the product of those, not the product you're using.
mm,
And the goal of social media apps is to make money. So the longer a person is on a social media app, the more money that company is making. So the algorithm is built to just show you more and more and more of the content that you like to see, just to keep you on the app. And if you're not on there long enough, you begin to get notifications that bring you back into the app. I mean, we've all been there where we missed a text or missed an email. So we open it up to check that. And 45 minutes later, we find ourselves scrolling. For us as adults, it's a big deal. But for a teenager who's developing and all sorts of things, and they're dealing with um, with maybe attention issues as their mind develops, it really creates major issues. And then when they get on there, as we mentioned earlier, the content they see can lead them down terrible roads, and parents have no idea.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah, I feel like what you were saying that there's people are just not aware of what their kids are actually doing because they're so much smarter than we give them credit for.
They are.
And and there's a certain depravity about a soul that is searching for something and that finds something that's sinful, and how it's like, go back to our camp example. It's like when the kids get off the bus, I don't know how this is, man, but every single time, and you've seen it working in youth ministry, but the bad ones always find each other.
They do.
Like they always birds of a feather flock together. They always find each other and they form their little group or whatever. And I feel like sometimes, like, within us as human beings, as simple creatures, we will find ways to be sinful and to
Yeah.
fulfill the desires of our own flesh. And a lot of times, that comes the avenue of that is technology. Um, yeah, that's so
Well,
helpful.
parents aren't bad parents. They're great parents and good people and godly people. They just don't realize the danger and the technology they've put in their kids' hands. And
Hmm.
you just well done with access to the world and porn and everything that's there. There's a level of curiosity in their mind. And as you mentioned, just a depravity and a level of sinfulness that when that's in their hands and there's certain conversations they hear or certain things that come to their mind, that's where they're going to go. And we cannot trust them. It's imperative not to trust them.
Sure, I am becoming more and more convinced. Yeah, absolutely not trusting them, right, with technology. But we do the same thing. Our kids are not teenagers, but understand we hey, it's like, hey, we don't trust you with this. Like remotes go in mom and dad's hands, right?
Mm,
And we're not trusting you with it. We're not just putting this over to you. But for what was I going to say? You had mentioned, I can edit this out, but there's something I really wanted to hone in there
Uh,
about.
rhythm or what maybe they would go to or the influence.
Um, oh, oh, one thing I'm becoming more and more convinced about is the fact that, like, the devil, it's not just about getting them involved in gross sin, like egregious sin, but
Mhm.
it's about desensitizing them and destroying their innocence. Right? With the
Yeah.
inundation of information and the sexualization of the media. I mean, because even if
Mhm.
you have things like Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and all of those, which half of those I don't have. Well, I do have Instagram, but I'm in the Instagram era, right? But
Yep.
with all of that, it's so sexualized and
It
I'm just becoming so much more convinced that the devil, it's not that he needs to get you to go out and cheat on your spouse or go out and to do something crazy. It is at one post at a time, one influencer at a time. He's chipping away at a child as a teenager's, like you were saying, the developing mind, chipping away at their innocence and
yeah.
without them even knowing it.
Well, and the devil, I mean, he is the prince of power of the air, right? I mean, the media,
Yeah.
while media is great good, media can be used for great harm as well. And when I think about just my own kids, how we love them and care for them and nurture them, and to know that there are people out there who have horrible intent for our kids and would
Hmm.
love to do them to protect our families and to guard them. And people for a long time have acted like sheltering our kids is a bad thing. Can I tell you, I urge you, please shelter your kids when it comes to technology. There's so much out there beyond what we understand. And it's a battle that we constantly have to fight. And we have to be sober and we have to be vigilant because we have a horrible adversary.
Hmm. Yeah. Be what is the Bible uses the word circumspect, right? We got to be watching our six, watching out what's going on behind us, because it's amazing to me, how, I mean, think about even the development. I remember talking about this with an older gentleman one time, and he was talking about just the access you had mentioned earlier about pornography. We would agree that that's probably the greatest danger on someone's, spiritual development, is the danger of pornography. And he was talking about pornography. He was talking about how he was talking about access, and he was talking about how, you just think about how it was 60 years ago, right? When you had to go to the store, like it was such a degrading act, right? It was such a process. It was like if you really wanted something, you had to go get it. And now it's three taps away on so many devices in your home. Like everything is so accessible and it's so easy, and then we wonder why our homes have just crumbled.
Well, and you think about, I mean, for the first 5,500 years of human history, there was no newspaper, there was no internet, there was no printed book. Right? The only way you had access to things was word of mouth or somebody literally writing it down. And then, the printing press comes along, and that was revolutionary because books could be printed and things could be passed out. But then from the printing press, I mean, eventually you move to the newspaper, which really changes the way information's viewed, to radio and then to TV. But now we have access to the entire world all the time.
Hmm.
And I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who was just talking about how the world is so much worse than it's ever been. And I just don't believe that. I mean, when you look at history, the world has been a very evil place for all of our time here. I mean, the very first family had murder
Hmm.
and things were terrible, but we were not designed to know everything about everything all the time. And because of technology and social media, our Facebook will be full of people who are experts on Ukraine one week and then Iran the next week. And we feel like we have to know everything about this entire globe when really for the first many millennia of our life, all we really knew was our family and our church and the people around us in our small communities. And that's changed and really led to so much anxiety and heartache and depression among young people today.
Hmm.
Their phone.
Yeah, yeah. I think I just recently heard right along the lines of what you're saying. I heard Wes Huff. I don't know if you know that name. He's a Christian apologist.
Hmm.
I don't agree with everything with Wes Huff, but he's great at textual criticism, all that. And he was talking about just taking a break from technology. It was on his YouTube channel recently, and he was saying, "I don't think we were designed to know, like what you said, know everything about everybody, or to have that many, for us to even consider that many opinions." Like
Hmm.
and I'm all for podcasting. This is a podcast, right? I'm all for
Absolutely.
our
We
content, and yeah, as we're ministering to young people and trying to get the gospel to them, especially on college campuses, we want to put things out where it's going to help them grow in the Lord. But at the same time, you know, there is so much of an inundation of this crazy amount of information, and like you were saying, connecting with, the entire world, and we think we have to know everything. There's a book that's coming in my future that I'm going to write, and I've already got the title for it. It's called Fragmented, and just how like kind of what I was saying earlier with the devil chipping away at innocence. It
Mhm.
is also, technology can be such a danger because it leaves your life fragmented. Like you have just corners, shreds of piece of paper, but nothing makes a picture. Nothing makes sense. And like you were saying, and then we turn around and then we wonder why we're so full of anxiety, we're so full of depression, we are so restless. Is because
Great book, by the way.
so, thanks. Because we are so fragmented in our thinking, and we've done it. Well, like me and you, we have done. We fall victim to it. I think everybody has in some way where they call doom scrolling, right? Where you just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, and it's like you're inundated with so many fragments of information that nothing actually makes sense. And what we tapped into, the doom scrolling, to maybe relieve some of the stress, is the same drug that's fueling that stress inside of us.
It
And,
is.
and I think it's the same with, like, why is there such a rise of teenage suicide today? Like what you were saying, how is there such a rise in anxiety? Like we're self-diagnosing that, like teenagers, 13-year-olds talking about how like stressful life is. I don't know about you, but man, like 13, what was stressful about 13?
Oh my goodness. At 13, I and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, whatever. It is just because you couldn't find your lunchbox or something.
Yeah.
But
Well,
but
and look, there's charts, there's studies, but when you begin to look at the charts, teenagers were generally happy until about 2007 to 2010 or 11. And then when you look at it, the chart just it spikes. And that was
mm,
the iPhone was 2007.
mm, yeah.
Media begins to come out. And there's a great quote: comparison is the enemy of contentment.
Mm,
And we do, and we see somebody's on vacation and another person's happy and they're doing things. And we know as well as anybody that social media is not reality. Our social media is not reality, right? We only post the best moments of life. So they're comparing their life to somebody who's on vacation or somebody who's having a good time or somebody who's got a new car. And they're looking at their situation. I think my life doesn't compare to that. And they're so anxious and upset. There's actually a great book called The Anxious Generation by
mm,
Jonathan, and not a Christian book, but it really deals with this from a great perspective and really shows how much technology has affected us negatively. I mean, we have more than we've ever had before, and people are less happy than they've ever been.
mm. I think there's some connection for sure. Um, that's really helpful. Thank you, Michael, for those helps. And if you're a parent listening to this and your teens have a phone, can I just second what Pastor Michael is saying that you know what your teens are doing. I mean, think about it. You're paying the bill. You have every right to take that phone away and to look into what they're doing, what they're looking at, know who their friends are. um, and this, I think, comes down to, and this is kind of a greater issue, Michael, but the hustle and bustle of American life has so disconnected the family. We're so connected to the world and disconnected as a family that we have parents that, you know, unfortunately, and let's just be honest, they work such long hours and then they get home to a teenager who sits on their bed and plays video games or sit on their bed and listens to music or texts a friend. They live their life on the same roof, but without each other. That it's there's got to be a connection made. And parents, I truly believe that biblically speaking, we are the ones, and again, I don't have teenagers, but I am the one that needs to initiate, be the spiritually mature one and initiate that. And by the way, dads, especially if dads are listening to this, you will stand before the Lord of how you steward your home. And so, especially if you're working hard, you're paying the bills, you got teenage girls, right? Sometimes the greatest, you know, uh, thing you don't have to fight is other boys off of your teenage girls, but it's what's being sown in their heart right now while they're young, and by the things they look at, by envying other girls, by and know those things. It's awkward at first, but take those steps. Take that step. I'm talking from, Michael, I don't know how your upbringing was, but for me, I'm talking from the other perspective. I'm talking from the teenager who, to be honest, wished that someone would have asked me more questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would have stopped and said, "Hey, what's going on? What are you looking at?" Right? Because I struggle with things. When I was a teenager, I struggled looking at pornography, and
Absolutely.
that
And I
that
think
became
teenage boy does. And
yeah,
now more, and yeah,
absolutely.
I wish, and my parents did a great job, but I really wish even there would have been more accountability in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, and somebody's gotta have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to speak up, and for me now as a dad, I realize how important it is for me to be involved in the spiritual development of my children, and to know, keep my thumb not on them, like, lording over and I'm dominant over you, but keeping my thumb on their heartbeat. How's their
Mhm.
heart to God? Right? What what are they, when they spat out an emotion and leave the table, what's going on behind that? What's the layer? What can dad get to? How can dad help? Right? And a lot of times those situations, resolving that starts with having the difficult conversations and being the first ones to do it. So, Michael, thank you for that. That's helpful. Let's talk a little bit about, just real quick, talk a little bit about the good stuff, right? Because we understand technology, there's a huge danger with it. There's teenagers that do things they thought they'd never do because of conversations they've had online or whatever the case may be. But let's talk about some good things. And what are some what do you see as like the current state of young believers today? We understand that they're inundated with technology and information and all these things. But is there anything positive that you can draw when you look at today's generation? Is there something positive you can draw? Hey, they've got an ingredient, there's something to them that if God gets a hold of, great things can happen in our country, great things can happen with our young people.
That's the good news is that there is hope. The generation right now that probably struggles the most, is my generation, the millennials.
Hmm.
But you looked at Gen Z and now Gen Alpha coming up, they're very curious, and they want reality. And as I've talked to different youth pastors, I think most are saying they're seeing the same sort of thing, that something special is happening right now. These kids want reality, they want preaching, they want to serve, and it's amazing to see just the way that God is working right now among teenagers. I mean, there's always an area of apathy and different things that you have to work through as human nature, but as a whole, I do see a generation coming on our heels that is ready to serve God and is ready to experience revival and see our world reach for Christ.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can attest to that in the way that when I have conversations with students, um, here in our local campuses, I mean, students want to connect, and you see it in their eyes. Like you're saying, they're so curious. They want to know what's real. They want to know what's true. And I think a lot of that boils down to, I was telling someone yesterday, how it boils down to one word. It's connection. They want to feel
Mhm.
connected, and they're inundated with so much information and so many things and so many opinions. It's like they want something that's raw, that's honest, that's singular, that's simple, right? And I think there's just I think honestly, we're Michael, this is my personal opinion, but I think we are going to Generation Alpha especially is going to have a revival of simplicity. There's going
Yes.
to be a revival of people who, and I hate to sound like frou frou here, but like, people starting a garden, to get just to get their hands in the dirt, to get to slow down, right? To ask, they go people go to their local church and they ask people like like real people questions versus just always jumping on the phone and getting an immediate answer. I think we're going to see a little bit of revival of simplicity of reading a book versus taking an online course with it we never finish, you know?
What and there was a reason that Charlie Kirk connected so well. Now it was
Mhm.
because he inherently true, and he made such a difference. And it's important that we give real world answers to this next generation. It really is because, as you mentioned, they want simplicity. They kind of want to experience things how they used to be, but they just want truth, and it's up to us to give it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you feel like this generation is let's talk about generation alpha for a second. Well, alpha and generation, what is it? Generation
Gen
Z?
Z, Gen Alpha.
Gen Z,
Yep.
yeah. Um, what would you say that young people today are ready for revival?
I think so, and that's the challenge of teenagers is that, um, they're always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. As I work with them and just try to help them through different things, you see they move forward and then and if you're a parent watching this today, um, they'll be on a spiritual high one day and then do something horrible the next day. So don't give up on them through that. But yeah, I absolutely. I look at our own youth ministry, young men being called to preach and surrendering it, and just some really, really good things happening. I do believe this next generation's ready for revival.
Hmm. Yeah, I believe it's my personal belief that the revival that I have prayed for since I was 8 years old, I got saved when I was 7, but I feel like I've honestly been praying. Like, God, I looked at my pastor and said, God wants me to do that. And I believe that God's revival's coming. I don't know how I even knew, like, prayed that when I was 8, but ever since then, I've been just felt in my heart that that's true. When I look at the next generation, I think this generation, I believe God's going to use. This nation is primed for another great revival. You can call it a great awakening or great revival, whatever, but it's primed and it's ready. And I think last summer with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and so many others that are stepping up to the front lines, doing like what our ministry does, going to the front lines. I believe college university in America is the front lines, the gospel in America.
Absolutely.
And I think people are pushing. They're understanding that time is short, time is limited, and we've got to get the gospel to these young people. So on that note, let's go. I want to ask you that. This will be the kind of the last question before we wrap up. But we talked a little bit about revival, kind of this current state of believers today. What do you feel like? What are some of the most effective ways to reach young people with the gospel today?
I mean, I think you've hit it already. Is to be available, to be real, to have that communication, that interaction,
Mm,
and do that, and they see the reality of our lives, and that the Bible is not just an ancient book of do's and don'ts, but it's the guidebook to a relationship with the creator of the universe, and that the creator of the universe wants a relationship with them and has a will for their life. And as we can point them to the real answers of life, um, uh, they're hungry, right? As we've said, they're searching, and we have the answer. And if we can proclaim that answer, I don't think there's really any one size fits all thing except the gospel. But as we share the gospel and live the gospel, it still works.
hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The gospel still works. There's our ministry, Good Talk, relies heavily on apologetics and apologetic questions. And just exactly what you're saying, Michael. They want to talk, they want connection, they want answers. And by simply being a listening ear, that's one of the greatest tools. I feel like, especially that's kind of the bread and butter of our ministry, is people coming up individually asking questions. And then it's amazing, you give them a little bit of grace, give them a little bit of your ear, and it's amazing how that paves the way for the gospel.
Well,
um
and have curiosities, like you say, don't shut them down when they ask a question. Every question's not asked in rebellion, right? And if just give them the ear, give them patience, and then lovingly give them the truth. The Bible says, "Speaking the love and truth." Right? I'm sorry, speaking the truth and love. So do that. Listen, and then allow God to speak. And when that
yeah.
happens, accomplish.
Hmm. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Michael. This has been super, super helpful. We're kind of close on our time, so we'll stop it there and maybe pick up this such a needed topic. How do we reach the next generation for Christ, especially with, again, if you're a parent listening to this and you have teenagers and they have technology, some of the dangers that come along with that, to be well guarded, and so that Christ can do His will through your teen's life and through your family's life. And so, Michael, this has been super, super helpful. Or where would people go to find out more about you or to find out more about your ministry?
Oh my goodness. I guess just our church website, cbcking.org. My email address is mlane@cbcking.org, and I'd be glad to connect or help in any way. I have some
Absolutely.
probably pretty boring.
No, it's been good. I think again, Michael alluded to this, but he has helped other parents set up things on their devices for their kids. So if there's any information that you have about that or questions that you have about that, he'd be great. You can email him with the email he just gave you, or you can email us at contact@tylerrobertson.com. We're trying to answer tough questions all the time, and if there's something that we can help you with, we want to help you or help your teenager. If there's something we can help you pray for, any of that, please feel free to contact us. Michael, again, this has been awesome, a great conversation, and we really appreciate you being on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me.